YN's POV. The sound of a man's voice, calm, low, and unfamiliar, cut through the quiet like sunlight through a shuttered room. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. No one spoke to me here. Not the guards, not the maids. They waited for Jungkook's permission. Only his voice filled these walls, sharp, commanding, absolute. So when the stranger said, "You must be Mrs. John," something inside me trembled. My heart pounded as if it didn't know what to do with gentleness. He stood just beyond the roses, tall, tailored in quiet confidence. Kim Namjoon. Everyone knew his name. Jungkook spoke it often, spat it, really, as if it were a curse. And now that curse had a face, calm and unreadable. Eyes that didn't look at me like I was property. I know who you are, I heard myself whisper. He smiled, not the rehearsed smile of men at business parties, but something almost human. Do you? Then that's unfair. You know my name, my reputation. But I don't know you. I looked down, clutching the rose stem until a thorn pricked my finger. There's nothing to know. He stepped closer, his voice softer. I don't believe that. The word startled me more than the sound of my name ever had. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I had been emptied of anything worth knowing, but my throat closed around the words. You shouldn't be here, I managed. My husband. I know. His tone stayed gentle, yet steady. And I won't overstep. He inclined his head and turned away. The gate closed with a quiet click. Only when he was gone did I realize I was shaking, not from fear this time, but from something I couldn't name. For years, I had lived inside silence. One sentence from him had reminded me what a voice could sound like when it wasn't meant to command.
Namjoon's POV. I should have walked back into my study and drowned myself in work, but the echo of her voice followed me like perfume. Soft, uncertain, painfully polite. Jungkook's wife. My rival's captive queen. In our world, people were loud, sharp, and hungry. She was none of those things. Yet every word she spoke lodged itself under my skin. There had been fear in her eyes, yes, but also a flicker of something braver. The small, stubborn would keep standing. I told myself it was pity, curiosity, anything but what it truly was, the first pull of gravity I hadn't felt in years. By the time the night settled over the gardens, I knew I'd lost the first round of battle I hadn't even meant to start. The day had barely settled into dusk when I heard footsteps from the neighboring lawn, heavy, deliberate, carrying the authority of a man used to being obeyed. John Jungkook. I'd seen him only at conferences and boardrooms, each time across long tables and guarded smiles. Meeting him here, surrounded by manicured hedges and open air, felt almost absurd. He approached in a dark suit and no tie, sleeves rolled once as though the fabric itself bowed to him. Even in silence, his presence was a challenge. Kim Namjoon, he said first, voice clipped but polite. I heard you're staying next door. 3 weeks, I replied easily. Work brings me here. He nodded once, the motion sharp. You've chosen an interesting neighborhood. His eyes flicked over my house, then back to me. Small world, isn't it? Too small sometimes, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. The faintest curve touched his lips, not quite a smile. Then I'll hope the air stays clear between us. We wouldn't want business matters bleeding into personal space. His words carried no open threat, but the temperature seemed to drop a degree. Of course, I said. Professional courtesy. We shook hands. His grip was firm, colder than I remembered. When he finally stepped back, his gaze drifted toward the garden that bordered our properties, the same corner where I'd spoken to his wife that morning. I trust the neighborhood's been welcoming, he said lightly. Very, I answered, keeping my expression neutral. A pause hung between us. Two men who ruled empires, both aware that rivalry was a blade with two edges. Then he nodded again, businesslike. Enjoy your stay, Kim Nam-jun. He turned and walked away, every movement calculated control. Watching him go, I understood the scale of the wall standing between me and the woman next door. It wasn't only power or pride that built it. It was him.
YN's POV. The sound of the main gate clicking shut rippled through the house like thunder. I didn't have to see him to know. Jungkook was home. My heart began its familiar, uneven rhythm. The sun hadn't fully set yet, and the lights in the corridor glowed golden, soft. But to me, they felt like interrogation lamps. I smoothed the front of my dress, adjusted a stray strand of hair, and stood perfectly still beside the stair railing. I'd learned that stillness sometimes kept him calm. Movement could be mistaken for guilt. His footsteps echoed on the marble, sharp and measured. Then silence. The kind that feels like it's waiting for you to breathe wrong. He appeared from a hallway, black suit still immaculate, the lines of his face unreadable. That same cold perfection he wore everywhere, the ruthless businessman everyone admired, the man who commanded boardrooms and shattered rivals. Namjoon Kim moved in next door, he said, voice low but cutting. It wasn't a question. Yes, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I was in the garden this morning, he introduced himself. Just a greeting. His eyes lifted, dark and unreadable. Just a greeting? I nodded quickly, hands clasped behind my back, so he wouldn't see them trembling. For a moment, I thought he would say more. His lips parted, his jaw tensed, and then he only brushed past me, the faintest scent of his cologne lingering in the air he displaced. The way he moved past me without a glance hurt more than if he'd shouted. I stayed frozen even after he disappeared upstairs. Only when I heard the faint closing of our bedroom door did I allow myself to breathe again. Dinner was quiet that night. The clinking of silverware was the only sound between us. He asked the staff about some files, about a shipment arriving from Tokyo, about deadlines. Never once did his gaze lift to meet mine. But I could feel it, the awareness of me, simmering behind his silence, studying, judging, waiting. Every bite felt like swallowing glass. The tension at the table was unbearable. When the meal ended, he stood, adjusting his cufflinks with that same mechanical precision. "Finish your tea," he said flatly, and left the dining hall. I sat there long after, staring at the untouched cup before me. My hands were cold, my chest tight. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Tears made him angrier. Our bedroom was already dim. The only light came from the ensuite bathroom, casting a soft, golden triangle onto the plush carpet. He was there, standing by the long window, his back to me. He had shed his jacket and tie. The white collar of his dress shirt was unbuttoned, the sleeves rolled precisely up to his forearms. It was the sight of his bare skin, a rare vulnerability, that always caught me off guard. I went to the dressing table, my movements muted. I took off the heavy silver jewelry, placing it one by one into the velvet-lined box. The silence stretched again, thick and ready to snap. "Leave the pins," he said, his voice a low vibration that startled me. He hadn't moved from the window. I paused, my hand halfway to the delicate pins holding my hair up. My heart was still racing from the dinner table, but now it slowed to a thick, heavy pulse. What does he want? I waited. The faint sounds of the city outside, a distant siren, the rustle of leaves, filled the void between us. He turned then, finally, his gaze meeting mine in the reflection of the mirror. It wasn't the cold, judging look he wore at dinner. It was heavy, complex, and desperately tired. For the first time all day, he looked like a man, not a statue. He walked over to the dressing table, not quickly, but with a deliberate slowness that made my breath catch. I stiffened, bracing myself, but he didn't touch me. He just stopped behind my chair, his presence a wall of warmth that shielded me from the emptiness of the room. He reached out, his long fingers carefully hooking the pearl clasp of the necklace I'd just placed on the table. Instead of putting it away, he simply placed his hands on the tops of my shoulders. They were cold, and the slight pressure was a question. I didn't answer. I just leaned my head back, ever so slightly, until the crown of my head rested against the solid warmth of his chest. The tension, the fear, the weight of the silence, all seemed to pool into that single point of contact. He inhaled deeply, a long, quiet breath against my hair. His hands tightened just a fraction, pulling me closer into the space between his arms, an anchor in the turbulent sea of our life. "Don't worry about Namjoon," he murmured, his voice rough. It was the closest he would ever get to an apology or a reassurance. He lifted his hands and gently, with excruciating patience, began to pull the pins from my hair. They fell silently onto the table as he freed the heavy strands, letting them cascade down my back. His fingers skimmed the sensitive skin on the back of my neck, a feather-light touch, before they came. He looked down at me, and I looked up at his face in the mirror. His expression was soft, his eyes dark pools holding my reflection. It was a silent, desperate language that spoke of ownership, fear, and a terrifying, fragile need. It was a moment of intimacy that existed entirely outside the boundaries of their daytime reality, a shared, secret prison. I knew what he wanted. Maybe it was something all men carried inside them, or maybe it was just Jungkook. He needed to prove that I was his, needed the world to see it. Every glance from another person, every polite word I spoke, threatened that fragile claim. Since meeting Namjoon that morning, I'd felt the tension building in the air like a coming storm. Jungkook's possessiveness had no edges, no limits. He didn't need reasons, he only needed a spark. He was behind me before I even heard him move, his presence pressing against the room like heat. The silence was heavy enough to bend under its own weight. Myself to breathe again. "Did he look at you?" His voice was quiet, almost calm. That was always worse. I couldn't speak. My reflection in the mirror looked foreign, small, frightened, waiting. He leaned closer, his breath ghosting over my ear. "You should know better than to make me doubt you." My pulse hammered. Every word felt like a thread winding tighter around me, a warning of what might follow. In that moment, I understood something awful. He wasn't angry about Namjoon. He was angry about control, about the idea that someone else might see the woman he kept hidden away. Without a warning, he fisted my hair so harsh that I believe my hair follicles are out already. I know he is hurt. I know about his possessiveness. He dug his teeth into my neck as if he wanted to count each nerve in my neck, and all I could do was scream because of the excruciating pain. But that did not make him stop. In fact, he ripped every piece of clothing was on me, and I hated how vulnerable I was under him. I tried to stop him, but all I received was a tight slap. "Jungkook, you don't stop your husband, love. I have every right on you, and when I'm punishing you, you take it like a good little girl that you are." With that, he slapped me again, even more harder this time. That's when I heard a click and I knew he broke my jaw, but all I could do was lay under him while he had it forcefully while I was dying out of pain. But that's the thing with Jungkook. The room went silent. Then came the sound, the one I had learned to dread. I didn't need to see his face to know what followed. When it was over, the air felt scorched. I lay there shaking, half conscious, half numb, the echo of his anger still burning through each. Somewhere through the haze I heard him on the phone, his voice suddenly composed, issuing quiet instructions. Minutes later, a doctor arrived, summoned in the middle of the night. I remember the soft click of her medical case, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. Jungkook stood beside her, his tone clipped but tender, almost desperate as he told her to ease my pain. He played the part of the devoted husband flawlessly, concern etched into every word. The injection blurred the edges of my vision. I felt the sting fade from my body, but the ache, the one that lived deeper than bone, remained. When the doctor left, he sat beside me on the bed, brushing a thumb against my temple. "You'll feel better soon," he murmured. "I can't stand to see you hurt." I stared at him through the fog, realizing that his love and his cruelty spoke the same language. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Jungkook's hand brushed through my hair while I sat at the dressing table. His touch was slow, deliberate, and full of a guilt that he would never name aloud. "Did you sleep?" he asked softly. I nodded, even though the truth was no. He bent closer, his reflection meeting mine in the mirror. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he whispered. "You're my wife. You're everything I have." He said it like a promise and a threat all at once. He smoothed the scarf around my neck, hiding the faint traces of his temper that had flared the night before. His eyes softened when he noticed how tired I looked. "I shouldn't have lost my mind yesterday," he murmured, fingers tracing the side of my face. "You know how I get when someone talks about you. The thought of another man looking at you." He stopped, breathing hard. "It kills me, Y/N." I stayed silent, because what could I say? That his love felt like drowning, that every apology was a chain? "Come on," he said, pulling me up gently. "You need to see the doctor. I'll stay with you the whole time." He helped me into the car himself, adjusting the seatbelt and brushing a stray lock of hair from my cheek. It looked loving. It was loving in his own broken way.
Namjoon's POV. I was watering the garden when I saw them. Jungkook's car rolled out of the driveway, gleaming like a mirror in the morning light. At first, I didn't pay attention, but then I caught a glimpse of her through the tinted glass when he opened the door for her. Y/N looked pale. The warmth that had touched her features when I first met her was gone. She kept her gaze low, shoulders drawn inward. It wasn't illness. I knew that look. It was weariness. My chest tightened. Jungkook closed the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and got into the driver's seat. The car slipped out of sight, leaving me staring at the empty street, feeling a slow, cold anger coil in my stomach. The evening sky was bruised with golden gray when I walked up the marble steps of the John mansion. I shouldn't have been here. Every step I took was a line crossed, a dangerous invitation to war. But the image of her this morning, pale, fragile, her jaw slightly swollen, it hadn't left my mind. The guards knew who I was, and even though their eyes flickered with hesitation, none of them dared to stop me. They knew the weight of my name. Inside, the house was silent, too silent. No footsteps, no maids moving about, no sound of Jungkook's commanding voice. Just a faint, broken sobs echoing from down the hall. I followed the sound until I reached a half-open door. She was there. Curled up on the couch, in a pale cream dress that hung loosely from her frame. Her hair was unpinned and messy, falling across her tear-stained face. Her hands trembled against her lap, and when I stepped closer, I saw the faint discoloration along her jawline, a dull purple mark against her soft. My stomach turned. "Wyan," I said softly, almost afraid of my own voice. She flinched, startled, then froze, as if unsure whether to hide or run. I lifted my hand slowly, palms open. "It's all right. I just want to check on you." Her eyes flickered toward me, watery and unsure. She tried to speak but stopped midway, her jaw tensing in pain. I realized then she cooed. I won't stay long," I murmured, I just needed to know you're okay. She blinked once, twice, as if trying to tell me something, and then nodded faintly. I took that as permission to sit beside her. The air between us was heavy, like the moment before storm breaks. I shouldn't have come, I whispered, looking away. But I couldn't just watch from the balcony, knowing you're in pain. Her fingers moved slightly, as if she wanted to write something in the air. She didn't, just looked down, ashamed, fragile. Does it hurt? I asked quietly. She didn't answer, just nodded once, biting her lip to stop another tear. I hesitated before reaching out, slowly, giving her enough time to pull back if she wanted. May I? I asked. She blinked again. Another nod. My hand brushed her cheek lightly, barely touching. Her skin was warm, too warm, and a faint tremor that ran through her body made me exhale sharply. You don't deserve this, I said under my breath. No one does. Her eyes met mine, full confusion and fear, but also gratitude. The kind tea. Without realizing it, my thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone. Just once, a silent promise that someone in this world still saw her pain. And that's when the air shifted. Footsteps. Slow, purposeful, heavy, the kind that froze blood. Her head snapped toward the doorway. Her eyes went wide, pleading. My hand dropped instantly. Jungkook stood there, his black suit still on, tie loose and eyes darker than night. The doorframe cast a shadow across half his face, but I could see the fury burning behind his stare. He looked from me to her, and then back, his jaw tightening with every passing second. Namjoon, he said, voice calm. Too calm. You've made yourself quite at home. The silence that followed was suffocating. YN's breath hitched. She looked down, hands twisting in her lap. I straightened my coat, forcing my tone steady. I came to see if she was all right. His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. You care a lot about another man's wife. She looked hurt. I replied quietly. She's fine, he snapped, stepping forward now, the air growing denser with every move. And even if she wasn't, it's not your place to fix her. Maybe it should be someone's, I muttered. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jungkook's gaze flickered to YN, trembling, head bowed. He looked back at me with a deadly calm. Get out of my house, Namjoon. I didn't move. For a second, we just stood there. Two men caught in a war neither could back down from. And in the middle of it, YN, silent, broken, a ghost of herself, looked up, her eyes begging for peace that neither of us could give. And for the first time in years, I swore I'd do something Jungkook would never forgive me for. I'd find a way to take her out of there. John, touch her again and you'll regret that day for the rest of your life.